Brought to you on UK Health Radio, The Natural Beauty Show. An in-depth look at the beauty issues that affect you. For most of us, personal hygiene is a standard element of our day. We get up, we wash, we clean our teeth, and we go about our business feeling clean, healthy, happy, and confident with our outward appearance. But for some people living in the UK, this is just not the case, and they face daily financial challenges that make even the most basic personal care impossible. Hygiene poverty is a very real issue facing thousands of families in the UK today, and it not only affects their well-being, it can also have a knock-on effect on their self-esteem and their ability to gain employment. We all know there should be no judgment and only support, but the reality is very different. If someone turned up to an interview at your workplace with unwashed hair or an unshaven appearance, would your first consideration be that this person is suffering financially and is unable to afford the very basic self-care products? In this week's episode, we're going to investigate this issue and what individuals, groups and communities are doing to support those in need. So joining me now is Judith Cummings, who is a Labour MP and co-chair of the all-party parliamentary group for beauty, aesthetics and wellbeing. Thanks ever so much for joining us on the show, Judith. And today we're talking about a really, really important topic, beauty banks and the issue of poverty in hygiene in the UK, really. So let's dive straight in and tell us a bit about how you partner with beauty banks to try and support what's going on.
Well, thanks, Natalie, and thank you for inviting me onto your show. It's great to be here to discuss such an important topic. Part of our rationale for the APPG was to support the work that Beauty Banks does in tackling hygiene and beauty poverty as such. The basic right to hygiene, and that's for self-esteem. It's also that I just find in my constituency, particularly women, always put their children first. If they're their mothers, they'll always make sure that their children don't go without shampoo, deodorants, all those kind of basics, plus a few of the things that are that we take for granted as well.
Yeah, of course. So even though, some of these banks, and the one in particular we're going to be talking to is called beauty banks, it's not really beauty, is it? It is real sort of self-wellness, looking after yourself, just basic cleanliness and hygiene, really, that these people are suffering with.
Yeah, it is. I mean, beauty banks does a tremendous job, and then making sure that those who are less fortunate get these basic hygiene products. And yeah, when we are talking about beauty, we are talking about toothpaste, toothbrushes, deodorants. It's very, very basics. I've heard from my community groups just what a difference it's made to families. Mums who wouldn't have had Christmas presents from the children without the help of beauty banks, and particularly through the pandemic, it's been really tough out there, and they've made such a tremendous difference in helping the most impoverished constituencies and people within those parts right across the UK, and people within those communities actually get the help that they so much need.
And what more can the government do to help support families? Is there anything more they can do other than providing these banks?
The government are not providing these banks. These banks are charities, and I think that's the nub of the problem. My view, and I guess I share it with many people out there, is that a lot of this work is actually should not be left up to charities. If we're talking about families not being able to access the basic hygiene products, is something fundamentally wrong in terms of our society. And I know that people will have different views, but that's my view. I just see that, when we consider poverty, we should look at what's going on within our society, and that includes the cuts to universal credit that we've seen quite recently, and also paying carers a decent wage, and reassessing our commitment as a society to those people that we actually value. As it gets said, particularly through COVID, when we've said about all these key workers who've kept Britain going, they're often the lowest paid, and they're the people that also benefit from beauty banks who've targeted lots of the emergency services and those key workers throughout COVID with their products and their campaigns.
Yeah, sure. And what do you think beauty brands and beauty companies can do to help? What do the beauty banks call upon from them?
Well, the beauty banks call upon the beauty industry to join in this collective effort. It is all about coming together to make sure that those who can't afford the basics actually get some help, because I think, everybody recognises that when we're on about beauty is much wider than just buying a new lipstick. It's about self-esteem, and it's linked to, like I say, a mum being able to hold her head up high when she's taking a child to school, or to go out with the confidence that she's going to be able to get that job. And that's the difference that this makes.
And of course, there's a huge overlap, isn't there? And there's been a lot of talk recently about period poverty and, young girls, young teenage girls, and some a little bit younger, of course, not really feeling able to go to school for a week every month because they just don't have access to the sanitary products that they need. And I think that in itself is where the banks can be a massive help, can't they?
Yeah. I mean, it's heartbreaking when you hear stories like that, and that's the reality of life for a lot of people. I don't know, as a mum, I think it's particularly heartbreaking for us when we think that there's young girls in those kind of situations. And, like I say, should it be left to charity is a matter of debate, but in my view it shouldn't. But I am very, very grateful that beauty banks have stepped up, and Jo Jones and her colleagues are doing the very best that they can to support families in such distress.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do you think it's realistic to think that this problem can be solved? Is this something that we think we're going to be carrying on with us for the sort of foreseeable future?
I think it is realistic, because let's not forget that, food banks and beauty banks are relatively new to our society. And they've 10 years ago, we didn't quite have the outbreak of food banks that we have now. And whilst, of course, I very much value the charitable work that people are putting into their communities, it does raise that question mark that there's a fundamental imbalance in our communities, in our society, if we're actually having to make sure that people are fed in the way that we do with either food banks or beauty banks.
And lastly, I just really wanted to talk about the sort of taxes on hygiene products. I mean, do you think the government could actually do a little bit more there by maybe reducing or removing taxes on certain products that are, like you say, not the lipsticks, not the things that are aesthetically pleasing, but the very basics, the shampoos, conditioners, body washes, soaps, sanitary products? Is there a larger step that could be taken?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And, I mean, if it was down to me, I'd add sunscreens to that list as well, especially as a fair-skinned ginger woman. Yeah. But, we all know the value of having sunscreens on our skin these days. So I think there's a lot more that we can do. And as I say, as a society, we've got to decide what's important to us. And I think, defending our communities as much as we can through these bad times is really, really important to us. So I so much welcome and value the work that beauty banks have been doing. Well,
thanks ever so much for giving us some time today. Your input's really valued, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Natalie. Lovely to meet you. Good luck.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So with me now is Jo Jones, founder of Beauty Banks. Thank you for joining me today, Jo. What are beauty banks? If you can start by telling us a bit about why they're needed and what they are.
Thank you for having me, Natalie, firstly. Yes, beauty banks. I guess the easiest way to explain what we are is we're a bit like food banks, but rather than food, we supply personal care and hygiene products to people living in poverty in the UK who can't afford to be clean. So that's all of the things that you and I take for granted and use every single day and pop into our supermarket basket without even really thinking about them. Things like toothpaste and deodorant and shampoo, that kind of stuff. Sadly, for many millions of people in the UK living in poverty, those basic items, those basic hygiene items are luxuries, and luxuries they can't afford. Yeah. And so beauty banks was set up to help to support people living in hygiene poverty with the donations of personal care and hygiene products.
Amazing. And how did it start? How on earth did you come across, first of all, the problem, and then what encouraged you to set this up?
Well, it was in February 2018. A very good friend of mine, Sally Hughes, who's also a journalist and broadcaster, and as well as an incredible friend, she had been doing some filming at a homeless shelter in Wales, and I had helped out in my local food bank, and we'd both independently became aware of this term called hygiene poverty, which means you can't afford to be clean. And we were obviously horrified by it because, you know, we've all been there, haven't we, in a situation at some point where, I don't know, the boiler's gone on the blink, or we've got no hot water, or, you know, we've been doing something like been out camping or something, and you get back and the first thing that you want to do is just have a really hot bath and a wash because you just feel so grotty. So we were both horrified to learn about hygiene poverty, and we both work in the beauty industry where there is an abundance of product, an abundance of money. You know, it's a very cash-rich industry that always does so well, even in times of recession. There's a lot of kindness and generosity, but also there's a lot of waste, a lot of product that goes to waste, whether that's because it's nearly out of date, or a formulation has changed, or some, you know, visual element of the packaging has changed. And so our idea was really simple. It was like, we will take from the haves and give to the have-nots, and just, you know, it was just a really simple strategy. That was it. No bigger long-term thinking, no designs to be a charity, no designs to do anything other than help people as much as we could using the contacts that we had and the industry connections that we had. And I think we launched with one Instagram post, and then the rest sort of has spun out from there, really.
And what sort of stats are around hygiene poverty? What can you tell us about that? How many people in the UK are living in what we would call hygiene poverty?
It's difficult to put a number on it now because of COVID and the effects that has had on poverty levels. It's already estimated that an extra 700,000 people will be pushed into poverty because of COVID. So fresh figures are difficult to obtain. But what we did know is pre-COVID, there were 14.2 million people in the UK living in poverty, and a third of those are children. So, I mean, it's difficult to say exactly what they're spending. You know, there's just not enough money for them to buy food, or to feed themselves and to feed their children, or to look after themselves in the way that, you know, we would all want to be looked after. So it's in the millions, not in the thousands, because of the COVID situation. And, you know, long COVID is going to have a long financial repercussions for us for a long time financially. It's going to be a lot more people being added to that list, unfortunately.
And what sort of person do you meet at the banks? I mean, for example, I was speaking to Judith Cummings, the MP, and she was explaining to me actually that a lot of women, so a lot of mothers, will go without for their children, and so they're the ones really that are suffering quite a lot because, you know, they're trying to ensure that their children get first and foremost, and therefore their own hygiene, their own personal well-being is put really to the background. Is that something you think is true?
Oh, it's absolutely true. I mean, we hear stories of women that, you know, that sort of hide from the fact that from their kids that they don't eat, because if they eat, it means the kids can't eat. They don't have enough to feed everyone. There was a woman that we had supported via a charity partner who was on chronic pain medication but wasn't able to take the medication because you needed to have food to be able to take the medication with. So that meant that she wasn't able to afford to feed herself all the time. So that meant that she had to go without her medication and was in a lot of pain. So that's absolutely true. I think just like beauty banks we don't support the end user directly. We support the end user via registered charities. When we set up beauty banks, our vision for it, as we were reverse engineering the more that it grew without us realizing what, you know, it was going to become, we've kind of reverse engineered the way that we do it, and it's all built on making as maximum impact as possible without creating a charitable business. So we don't have an office, we don't have staff. We have one part-time person who works full-time since COVID, and we have one storage centre near where I live and one where Sally lives, my co-founder, and that's pretty much it. Like, we don't have bills, overheads, we don't have anything like that, because we wanted to create a movement that was powered by like-minded people who wanted to do something to help, rather than create a business that needs to be sustained, maintained, that needs staff and heating and phone bills and expense accounts and all of those things. That's not what Beauty Banks is about. It's very grassroots. So the way that we don't have physical banks as such. We just have different ways that people can get involved with us, donate to us and support our work that doesn't actually involve there being a physical sort of.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that often really distracts from the aim, the mission, doesn't it? Anyway, so that's a much more effective way of doing it. So can individuals donate, or is it mostly larger companies you're asking to donate? How do the donations work? No,
it's like anyone who wants to support us can donate, and there is no such thing as a donation that's too small. It's the only caveat that we have with our donations is everything is unused. That's a health and safety issue, but also a dignity issue. I think that if you are, in a vulnerable situation, or you are living in poverty, you are suffering from tough times, half a bottle of shampoo that's already been lightly used is not, not going to make you feel that necessarily great about yourself, so unused products is what we ask for. There are various ways that you can donate. If brands want to donate, they can get in touch with us directly via Instagram or our email, website, and that's a sort of separate conversation. But individuals can donate in several ways. They can either donate cash online. So on our website, which I've just redone, I'm really proud of myself, because we have to do it all ourselves. Like we run the social, we run the website, we run, it's all us. So you can donate cash online, which we then we just translate directly into products. Every pound that gets donated to us gets put into product, because we don't have that infrastructure that means that 25p goes to this, or the office running costs or anything like that. So you can donate that. You can donate products to us online directly via a company called eShow. So all the links are on our website. You basically, they're a bit like Costco, but much smaller operation. So you can donate 6 deodorants to us. You buy in bulk. And what they do, they package everything up for us and send it directly to the charities that we ask them to send it to. Excellent. So that means we can send charities exactly what they need at that particular time. So sometimes charities might find themselves with no toiletries at all. Sometimes they might find themselves with tons and tons of sanitary pads, but no toothpaste. So there's no point in us sending them pads, so having that communication with the charity is important. So we send them what they want when they need it. Or we have beauty spots, which are donation actual boxes in 100 Superdrug stores across the UK. Brilliant. Postcode finder. So just go onto the website, put your postcode in, it show you where the closest one to you is. You don't have to have bought the product from Superdrug. You can bring it from home and donate it, or you can buy it from Superdrug. And yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I think I've covered it.
It's great, though. I mean, it's all about making this service accessible to those that want to donate and those that need to use it, isn't it? It's just
convenience is the new luxury. Someone
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we all have very little time, don't we, on our hands these days. So, are you trying to inspire other people to set up beauty banks or something similar to what you've set up? I mean, is this something that you think, actually nationally it's such a huge issue? You think that, more groups could get involved and start setting something like this up?
Oh, for sure. I mean, we do have this this kind of model called Be a Beauty Banker. So if you, we've got 2 different types. And again, it's on the website, all the packs and everything are on there. So you can either be a private banker, so you collect donations from your friends and family, it might be your school or your office or whatever, and then we will match you with a charity in your area that you then donate those products to. So what's donated local stays within your community. It also means you have that connection with the charity in your area. because you go and drop it off. So we create that connection. Or you can be a public banker. So what that means is you've got a space that can be accessed by the public. So maybe it's a hair salon or a shop or whatever. Then you can invite customers or the public to come and donate. And again, we connect you with a charity in your area and you drop off those donations directly to them. So, you know, there's loads of packs on our website. You can just click onto a pack and all of our assets are there, like posters and like messaging and all that kind of stuff. Print it all off, stick it on a box or whatever you want to stick it on, and go out and start collecting on our behalf. That's another way. It's a bit like an Avon lady, I suppose. Yeah. Or we kind of got the idea from Macmillan, you know, the Macmillan bake sale.
Absolutely,
download everything, do your sale and send them the money.
Brilliant.
Like
I mean, now's the great time of year. If anyone's listening in and they like the sound of getting involved in doing this, of course, we're coming up to Christmas. How many of us get gifted, perhaps, you know, gift sets, you know, toiletries, all sorts of stuff, don't we? We get given over Christmas. And, you know, perhaps there's a few that, or perhaps you get too many and you just think, actually, do you know what? I'm going to donate 25% of what I've been given because I'm not going to use all of that. And it's going to sit gathering dust in my bathroom for the next year anyway. And, you know, now would be a great time to get this set up ready for that kind of January splurge of people just getting rid of stuff they don't need anymore.
Oh, definitely. There is actually, I did forget, there is one other way. If you've got products from home that you do want to send us and you don't want to be a beauty banker, like, you know, a lot of people like to re-gift to us after Christmas, which is lovely, just what you've mentioned. Again, it's on our website. It's called Drop Point. They are a charity that support other charities. So you can send products to us really inexpensively because you know, toiletries can be heavy, which means that the cost of the packaging and the postage can be expensive. But what they do is they subsidize packaging, they subsidize postage, so you could, I think, for like £8 you can send us a box that weighs up to 25 kgs. And there's really there's cheaper options as well, but that's another way that you can donate to us as well. That's also another way that we reach other charities as well, is through Drop Point. You know, if because I've got, like you, quite a few kids, and they'll wear a coat and then 5 minutes later it doesn't fit them anymore, and then you've got this lovely coat, and rather than give it to a charity shop, which is only for people who can afford to shop in charity shops, and people that are living in poverty can't necessarily afford to shop in charity shops, go on Drop Point, put children's coats, and it'll pop up with all of the charities that are looking for children's coats. And then you can just donate your coat to them. I do that with their books. I do that with, you know, if they get given lots of the same, they always get given at least 3 David Walliams books every Christmas. They go in
David
there.
Walliams.
I know, it's always on offer for about a tenner at Watercodes at Christmas. So they end up with tons of them. But I would like to encourage people, and I do this with my friends as well, is don't just take things and dump things at a charity shop. You know, really, if you go out of your way just to have a look at where you can donate a coat or 2 coats, especially at this time of year when it's cold, and a lot of homeless shelters, they really do need things like coats. You know,
so being a bit more conscious about how you're gifting this stuff. Do you think the government could be doing more to help? I mean, this is obviously a serious issue. I mean, you know, 14.2 million people are being directly affected, and likely more, as you've mentioned. You know, what could the government be doing to help support?
They absolutely should. And I think part of our purpose, our core purpose, is to drive change. So it's all well and good us supplying charities and people with products, but essentially that's why the welfare state should exist, to look after the welfare of people who can't afford to look after themselves in certain ways. So definitely, I think we work very closely with Judith, actually, and Caroline Hirons, who's a beauty blogger. Caroline Harris, in MP in Swansea, both in the shadow government, and we've set up an APPG together, an all-party, a cross-party parliamentary group, to really help champion certain changes. And we're getting together again early next year to see what that looks like. So one of, you know, there was, you'll know, I don't know if many people are aware of it, but now sanitary products are available in schools up and down the country.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
For everyone. So it's not just some we only give them to children that can't afford them because that's stigmatizing. They're available to everyone in schools. So it's that there's certain changes that we're going to work together to really drive at government level and lobby government to drive change, because as I say, we're just putting a sticking plaster over a problem by servicing with product. We need to be operating at a higher level to get that to get that change made, because otherwise, kids will be going to school unclean. They will be keeping themselves small and invisible at the back of the class and not participating because they can't afford to be clean. And that is absolutely not right, and something that the government needs to take responsibility for.
Absolutely. What's been your biggest learning outcome so far with this journey? What have you discovered most?
Probably, I think you have more time than you think you do. And I think there is this sort of competitiveness of busyness. I'm so busy, you're so busy, blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, oh, I've got 3 kids and a full-time job and I run a charity. And then you could be, well, I've got 4 kids and a full-time job and I run a charity. And I do, it's not, you do have the time. You do have the time. You can find the time to do something. And it doesn't need to be something as big as, what we've ended up doing. Not at all. It can be something as small as what I mentioned earlier about going on Drop Point and just being really, mindful about where you're regifting stuff that you have to give. You do have the time. And I think it's humbling doing something that's actually is helpful, and especially in a time of crisis as COVID has been, where we've all felt so helpless. We've all felt so contained, and it's not just one way. We get a lot out of it. It's not purely altruistic. We get a lot out of it, and our kids get a lot out of it as well. They see charity in action. They see without being sort of, you should be happy for what you've got. You should be lucky. You have this, you have this. They see firsthand how lucky they are and they help and they get involved. So actually, it's not just taught me one thing. It's taught me a million different things. Yeah, sure. And I can't imagine my life without it now.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, it's fantastic what you're achieving with it. And, I really hope that us raising this issue on the radio show this week is going to be really highlighting to people that, this really is an issue. And, we're all aware of the need for food banks, but we haven't really thought so much about the kind of hygiene end of things. So, thanks, Jo, and thank you for enlightening us all.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
As Jo Jones mentioned, beauty banks operate by receiving donations and then distributing these to grassroots charities at a community level. So let's talk to one of those charities now. So joining me now is Sam Austin, who's the Deputy Chief Executive of Chlamai. And it's lovely to have you with us today, Sam. And, such a poignant issue that we're talking about this week, and that's hygiene poverty. And actually, the stats, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, something like 37% of people in the UK go without basic hygiene and grooming essentials. So let's start there. Let's talk about the charity, what you guys do, and how people can be supported by you.
Oh, thanks. And thank you so much for inviting me today. It's a pleasure to be doing this with you. So Chlamai is a charity, a Welsh charity. Chlamai means steps or progression in Old Welsh. So the idea is that people are going to be moving on and developing and moving forward while we're supporting them. And we work across the whole of Wales to support young people, women and children who are homeless, threatened with homelessness. And our mission is to end homelessness in Wales. And we provide a range of services. So that when somebody becomes homeless, we provide advice services, out of hours support, and a youth home helpline for somebody who's really doesn't know what to do, temporary supported accommodation where there's somebody there 24 hours a day to support people, refuge accommodation for women fleeing domestic abuse, and we provide a lot of outreach services in the community as well. But we also believe at Chlamai that it's really important to go upstream to try and end homelessness. If our mission is to end homelessness, it's not not just about doing the firefighting when somebody becomes homeless. We want to go and turn the tap off further upstream. So we provide a range of prevention and early intervention services to help to stop people when they're becoming homeless or threatened with homelessness. So, for example, we provide early intervention service in schools. We work with schools to identify young people who are most at risk of becoming homeless and provide support services around that. We provide family mediation services. So when a teenager and their parents or carers aren't getting on, and that can lead to homelessness, we can go in and we can work with both the parent and carer and the young person and help them find some common ground and learn tools to get on with each other. And then we also provide healthy relationship training for young people that we support, so that they can avoid finding themselves in a really unsuitable relationship, and hopefully avoid becoming in an abusive relationship. And then alongside all of that, we provide a training program called Learning for Life, because we truly believe that if we can get young people back into work, training and education, we can get them earning money so they're economically active and financially independent. That will really help them in the future avoid homelessness.
Yeah, absolutely. And how has the pandemic affected people? You know, I mean, you talk then about, you know, getting young people into work, you know, massive knock-on effects there must have been from the pandemic.
Oh, yes. I mean, it's, you know, right at the beginning of the pandemic, we made a decision that we were going to make sure that we focused on the well-being of the people we support and the well-being of our colleagues, and we would keep every single service open. So we've seen a huge increase in numbers of young people accessing our youth homeless helpline. So, you know, having to leave the accommodation they're in and having nowhere else to go. We've seen a huge increase in demand on our domestic abuse services, and also women who've been really trapped in abusive relationships and really struggling to actually get out, or even having any time away when you know, working from home and lockdowns were introduced. And then we've seen a massive increase in the poor mental health of the people we support. So many of the people we support in our 24-hour accommodation projects have experienced a range of traumas in their life, and being locked down and not being able to go out has really exacerbated that. And then, of course, for young people not going to school, not going to college, has been really difficult. We've kept our learning going, so we were able to provide our Learning for Life programme remotely. But actually, those entry-level jobs where and employers that were willing to accept young people who need a bit of support have just gone. And although there is a lot of employment vacancies out there, they're looking for people who've got experience. And for most of 2020 and for part of 2021, a lot of those entry-level jobs just weren't there anyway, because those services, those businesses weren't working, like hospitality, for example, places like that just weren't working, or shops being shut.
Yeah, sure. And, you know, I imagine, I mean, we've been talking specifically about beauty banks in this episode of the show, but it all starts with food banks, doesn't it, presumably? I mean, so do you help with donations towards people that maybe they're in accommodation or they're in temporary accommodation, but they don't have the work or they don't have the income they need to support themselves? Is that another part of what the charity does?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about making sure that people have enough money to live on, and helping them if they don't. So we work really closely with all our local food banks across Wales. We're able to give vouchers out for people to go and access food banks. We also work with another charity called Fair Share that delivers food to our projects and to our offices that we can distribute out. During lockdown, we had a lot of hospitality businesses that weren't working, but we're actually cooking and bringing food that we could then distribute to people that we support, which was absolutely amazing. You know, gourmet food, really high quality, fantastic food that we were getting. And of course, beauty banks. I mean, without beauty banks being able to provide those essentials, we just wouldn't have been able to carry on. And during all the different lockdowns, we had a huge band of volunteers who would come to our offices and distribute things across all the communities that we were working with. with. And that included the amazing donations that we get from beauty banks.
Yeah. I mean, also, the name beauty, it always conjures up images of us all being very vain about ourselves, but it's not a vanity project, is it? I mean, you're doing all this hard work trying to really help someone's self-esteem and their confidence in themselves, upskilling them, giving them the skills they need to get out there and to make them attractive to an employer. But actually, if their basic access to basic hygiene products isn't available, that can seriously affect their mental well-being and their ability to put themselves out there, can't it?
Absolutely, massively. I mean, I think when we talk, what we do in this country is we compartmentalise poverty into food poverty or heat poverty or hygiene poverty, but actually it's poverty.
One thing.
It's all one thing. And the reality is, if you've got very little money or no money, then you're having to make really, really difficult life choices. So are you paying your rent or your mortgage? Are you putting food on your table or food for your children? And those are the main things that people are making a choice about. So actually, essential hygiene products come really, really low down on that list. So if it's a choice between buying food or buying shampoo or conditioner or shower gel or whatever it is, you're going to buy the food for you and your children. But actually not being able to wash your hair, not being able to keep yourself clean, not being able to clean your teeth, all those things actually massively impact on your confidence and your self-esteem. But also in terms of actually going out and getting a job. If you can't wash your hair, if you look dirty, if you're smelly because you can't use deodorant, you're not going to get a job. We live in a society where everybody makes subconscious judgments about how people look. We do it we don't even realize we're doing it. But if you see somebody that's got dirty hair, a dirty face, is smelling, you're not going to choose that person for a job. If you're a young person going to school or college, you're not going to go if you know that you haven't washed your hair and someone's going to bully you because of that. Or if you're smelling because you can't use deodorant, you haven't got deodorant. So as well as massively impacting on your self-esteem and your confidence, it's a huge barrier to actually just getting you outside the door because of how people will perceive you. And it becomes a really vicious circle then, that you're more likely to become depressed, you're less likely to go out, you're therefore less likely to earn any money. So the whole poverty issue is going to get bigger and bigger as well.
Yeah, sure. And what's your background, Sam? How did you get involved with the charity in this way? Have you always been involved with charities at this level?
So I started, I've been at Llamai for a very long time, for 20 years. And I think my heart will always be at Llamai. I have got jobs to leave in the past, but there's something about the way that we work and the difference that my amazing colleagues make to the people's lives day in, day out that keeps me within the charity. So I used to work for the local authority, one of the local authorities in Wales many years ago. It was around homelessness. I have always volunteered in charities from when I was a student. And I came to Llamai over 20 years ago to start up an accommodation project in the private rented sector. And the organisation, the charity, was very small then. There was probably about 30 people in the charity, and now there's nearly 600 colleagues and volunteers, and we now work across the whole of Wales rather than just a couple of local authorities. And that's because there is so much need, obviously not just in Wales, but Wales is where we work, and we would want to try and reach out to every young person, every woman who needs our support, to actually help them change their lives, because what we're doing is we're working alongside them. So I've been really lucky that in my journey at Llamai, that I've been one of those people that's been helped to introduce new projects and get us into new areas and meet new people. But the reality is, I can talk about the amazing work we do. It's the work my fantastic colleagues do day in, day out. They're the people that make the difference. They're the real heroes in all of this.
I'm always so heartwarmed to hear the amount of time and effort people put into making other people's lives better. It's just, it's amazing. And how can anyone listening into this support your charity? charity, what can people do to help everything that you do? Are there any donations people can make? Or
Yeah, I mean, at the moment we've got a Secret Santa appeal going
Lovely.
on. So every year we make sure that we give everybody we support a Christmas present. And it's often the only wrapped up Christmas present or the only Christmas present they will have. It might be the only Christmas present they've had for many, many years. And we get told that every year. In fact, we got a donation from somebody that we used to support last week, and that person said they remembered the difference that wrapped up Christmas present made to them, and they wanted to send that message back. It gave them hope. You can also obviously donate to beauty banks. I mean, I think that the essentials that we get from beauty banks are so important. We only get funding from all our different funders to provide services. We don't get funding to provide things like Christmas presents or hygiene products. So we are reliant on all the different charities like the food banks, like beauty banks, to get that for the people that we support. So by donating to beauty banks or by donating to Thamai, you really are making a massive difference. And during the pandemic, when I was talking about the young people and the women that we support whose self-esteem and their mental health was really rock bottom, I reached out to beauty banks and I said, as well as the essential hygiene products, have you got any special things that we could give out? And Sally and Joe and Lauren, who are just amazing people running beauty banks, they provided some fantastic, beautiful luxury donations that they'd received, which meant that we could send out well-being packs to people who were really, really rock bottom. And when I mean rock bottom, they were people who were actively considering suicide, who were perhaps self-harming, and it made such a difference to them. So anything you could give to Thamai or to any other charity like us does really make a massive difference to the people that we support.
Yeah, sure. And it's so simple, isn't it? I mean, we're all out now or online, busy buying gifts for loved ones. How easy is it for just add one more gift box to your shopping trolley? It's not a lot.
It's really, it's so easy. Absolutely. And if you want to support Thamai, you can go to our Secret Santa appeal on our website, which is www.thamai.org.uk. Or you can do a donation to beauty banks. Excuse my dog barking now.
Don't worry. I mean, beauty banks is brilliant. And actually, another thing I was talking to Joe about for the new year is obviously at Christmas we do often all get given that odd one beauty box set, don't we? That we think, oh, I'm never going to use this. Rather than it sitting gathering dust, that's the time to donate that, isn't it? And
100%. I think we all get things for Christmas that, it's lovely to get a present, but we know we're not going to use it. So pass it on to somebody who it will make a massive difference to them. Absolutely. Please do that. And you're helping somebody else, and you're going to get a warm, fuzzy feeling inside from doing that as well.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Sam. I really appreciate that.
That's great. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been amazing to throw more light on the issues of hygiene poverty, and although it's clear that more needs to be done at a governmental level, actually community support is highly beneficial also. We're going to pick this issue up again in the new year and plan to run our own donation rally with you. So, over the Christmas period, if you do find yourself in receipt of an unwanted beauty, cosmetic or toiletry gift, hold on to it and listen in. We'll give you more details in January. Brought to you on UK Health Radio, The Natural Beauty Show, an in-depth look at the beauty issues that affect you.